Do you expect?
Got you speechless, Will. This is awesome.
I know. I think it's the first time, maybe ever.
Over 30 episodes, we have a record moment. Ladies and gentlemen, speechless.
I deserve a badge for that. Because we're an accessible brand, we can democratize a bit sustainability or awareness around these issues, right? I mean, people can come and enjoy sustainable coffee at McDonald's at a very affordable price. They don't have to spend a ton of money just to have access to that sustainable coffee.
69 million people. And I saw some figures lower and slightly higher, but something from
it's in that ballpark, yeah.
Yeah, 69. And that's an incredibly powerful amount of people. And I don't want to quote lines from, a Spider-Man film, with great power comes great responsibility. But just imagine
which Spider-Man movie? That's the key.
Well, hello and welcome to The Stream, an unscripted, unedited, free-flowing conversation featuring guests who reject the status quo with a bias for action in the world of water and beyond. My name is Tom Freyberg. I'm an environmental journalist and content creator specializing in water.
And I'm Will Sarney, a water strategy consultant, doing my part to solve wicked water problems.
And today we are thrilled to be joined by Ian Olson, who is the Senior Director of Global Sustainability for McDonald's Corporation, as also the Adjunct Associate Professor for Supply Chain Sustainability and Resiliency at Northwestern University. Ian, good to see you. How are you doing?
Hey guys, how are you?
Terrific. It's Wednesday.
I really do want a vest though. I'm gonna be honest.
Okay, what size are you?
Oh, I'm not going to say that in public.
Oh, come on. All right, put it in the chat box.
6'2". Yeah, I just need an XL. I'll be all good.
Well, that question needs to be, what size were you pre and during the pandemic, right? Because I think for most people, it's changed, right?
I've been proud of myself. I actually did pretty well. So, I mean, I know that people have had better weight losses, and weight gains, but I've actually pretty stable. So I've done all right.
Okay, so if we get you a size, it's guaranteed to last.
Elastic, right?
No, not elastic. That's a whole other conversation. You could wear it until it wears out because you're steady. All right,
there you go. An elastic vest that lasts. I think if we can go shopping for something like that, that will work.
That's your swag.
That's the swag. Well, listen, Ian, thanks so much for joining us here. We're in the middle of season 3 for The Stream, and I guess the narrative arc at the moment is we're speaking to a handful of multinationals. So it's super interesting to kind of bring you in to find out, I think, what water means to McDonald's, particularly with your journey into your current role. And then we'll talk a bit about some of the partnerships and things that McDonald's is up to. So having taken a little look at your LinkedIn, not stalking, of course, I saw you served a pretty good stint at the Ford Motor Company. Yeah. In the role of sustainability, right?
Yeah. No, it's I guess LinkedIn's better probably than having a wiki page, right? So I'm glad
they say it's
LinkedIn
it's
a little bit more accurate.
Right?
Yeah. No, so that's good. And I'd like to stay off wiki.
And Ian, you get a wiki page when you get the vest.
Okay. Then maybe I'll pass on the vest. Well,
all right.
I still am Midwestern at heart and like the lower profile. I've had kind of a weird, crazy journey, I guess. I honestly didn't have many environmental leanings growing up as a kid or through school or even through college for that matter. My graduate degree was supply chain management. Undergrad was economic policy. I joined Ford Motor Company thinking I was going to be a buyer. I did buy for a while. They put us through a leadership program. And then really what sparked my interest was my second rotation. I was in fleet marketing as an assistant brand manager. So did police, taxi, limo, government vehicles. And then we had alt fuel vehicles. So I'm going to date myself. Late 90s, early 2000. The alt fuel vehicles were propane fueled vehicles. They were natural gas, CNG vehicles. So needless to say, when you're driving some of these test cars around and you have propane on the side of it that's fueled by propane, people are asking, can you grill on the hood and stuff like that? So that was my first introduction into alt fuels.
Right.
And then they created a job. Bill Ford, set out an agenda that we were going to focus on climate change and human rights before it was really ever kind of cool, which was, looking back on it, a big deal. And luckily, our global vice president of global supply chain said, hey, I'm going to be a champion for it, created a job. It was called corporate citizenship analyst is what the title was. And I was either going to go over to Land Rover to buy, or I was going to go do this job. I said, yeah, this job sounds cool. I'll do it for a year, rotate back and go buy. And I never left. So I kind of came at this as, I don't have a sustainability education. I didn't have this inner drive, if you will, probably as a younger person throughout, that this is exactly what I wanted to do. But working with others to build a really great program at Ford was a ton of fun. I still love the auto industry, still follow it. I'm glad to see them doing so well and doing some really great stuff.
Ian, Tom and I talk about this often, about sort of the unique power of an outsider coming into, sustainability in general, water in particular, that, you come at this and having known you and worked with you, you're really open to innovation. No, I take it as a compliment, as opposed to.
I do. Can you tell my wife and kids that? That's all.
Happy to. Right after we send you you get them
watch this. I'll make them. Right. I'm joking. I'm joking, of course.
We'll send you the soundbite where Will says you're very open. You can have that on loop at home all the time. So, Daddy, I'm very open. Come on.
We'll get one of those video screen the frames
just
that has the visual.
Loop it. But just the ability not to be encumbered by, well, that won't work. I've never seen it work, as opposed to, sure, why not? And taking a chance, a little bit of a risk, and exploring, as they say, the art of the possible.
Yeah. I think I've gotten better at it as time has gone along. I think I had a fear of failure growing up, right, a bit. And I think I've learned to get better at it and learn that I'd rather fail and then learn from it. And I think we try to, on our team, we really have to invoke that a lot, because a lot of the innovation is, a lot of what we do is failure, especially as sustainability people inside companies. As I've kind of tried to equate, especially to my American colleagues, a Hall of Fame baseball hitter is going to hit 300 or even a little below that, which is 30% of the time they're successful, right? It's about the same for sustainability inside companies. You're going to throw stuff up there you're going to get knocked around and you're going to fail. And so I think I've just learned that. I don't know that I would say I came into it thinking that way. But I think I've learned it over time that, 70% of the time you're going to fail at some of the proposals you have, but you're going to be able to take those, learn from them, move them forward, take the best parts, right? And eventually they'll come along. And I think that's the other thing, is that nothing moves really fast. And I think coming in without the formal education, I've had to learn along the way. So maybe that's why I've been more open. I don't know.
I find it fascinating, Ian. And like Will said, it's actually an advantage to some respect, coming in with a fresh perspective, but actually coming in from, you could say you were a master of logistics when it comes to supply chain management. And ultimately, if you can partner the gargantuan logistics that McDonald's has to operate on a daily basis. I mean, I looked before we started this call, 36,000 restaurants in over 100 countries, in terms of managing those millions of parts and making sure the whole supply chain embeds sustainability and improved water practices. I mean, that's a strength to what you bring to the role, I think.
I hope so, as time goes on. But it is interesting you bring that up, because I think McDonald's is like no other company I've been part of, right? And in that it's so diverse. it has a history of, supporting small business owners throughout the world,
Mhm.
right? Yes, we're a big brand, but we are a collection of small business owners as well, right? In terms of owner operators throughout the world. And then we have an incredible supply base, right? That is a unique supply base in terms of some of the agreements going on, handshake agreements going back to the 1960s when Ray Kroc was around, right? So it's a different supply chain model, which has been great because there's a lot more partnership model, I think,
Mhm.
that you see, which allows us to kind of play around in some items, but not everyone's on the same page too. That's the other
Right.
thing, right? And I think the one thing that I would say that has helped, and again, I had to learn it probably, going through climate change and starting to talk about climate change or learn about it in 99, 2000, and then throughout, right, was finally just getting over arguing about climate change. And, some of this is about resources. This is about, all of us are resources, dependent companies. And for me, having an economics background, it's simple supply demand. And there are more and more people. There's not enough land. There's not enough water. And I think that's why I've gravitated towards water, to be honest, in terms of a personal interest of mine, because it's a more straightforward conversation, number one. And I can have a conversation with someone who may not believe in climate change, but I can talk to them about water and they get it.
Right.
And if I can bring them along on water, maybe I can bring them along on climate change later, but I can't get the whole thing right away. So it's kind of how you frame your engagements. And I have found it more effective to kind of frame it in that way, especially with the skeptics, if you will.
Right.
In terms of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, everyone gets water at some level,
It's a very visible part of climate, whether it's too little or the opposite end that we've seen in Europe recently, the very destructive flooding, right? So that's a very visible side and impact of climate change that people are now seeing more and more of.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think it's, to your point, well, they get it. I just don't know that we appreciate it, value it. I know we can talk about that later.
Right.
But it's now it's just raising awareness, right? I mean, now it's like, hey, how do you transition to, oh my gosh, yeah, this is part of what we do and what we need to think about.
I completely agree with you. Yeah, it's a touch point. How do people connect to water, and then in turn, some of the issues that drive what we're seeing in the world of water with respect to scarcity, poor quality, and inequity and access. And it's sort of that gateway into a broader discussion of root causes and how do you solve water and value water and so on.
Yep. No, totally.
So agree. Then, from your background at the Ford Motor Company to your role at the moment, then, how is McDonald's looking at the world of water right now? Through what particular lens? Because I think if you think about the items that you serve in the millions every day, from beef burgers to poultry to fries, or as we call them over here, chips, potatoes, right?
Proper
Everything
way, right?
has
That's the proper way.
either water as part of the ingredient to make that ingredient. Tell us how McDonald's is kind of looking at the water side now then.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're trying to learn from a lot of great work that's already been done out there. I think that's part of it is, I think there have been those that have had it, as any company, any brand, you got to prioritize the issues that you've wanted to work on, right? And a lot of our work has been around sustainable sourcing and our 2020 sustainable sourcing goals around fish and soy and beef and things like that. So there's been a lot of work put into that. We're working on climate change. We're working on packaging and circular economy, right?
Right.
So I think, when I think about water, I think it's one of those things that wasn't a natural, oh my gosh, we have to work on and prioritize it right away. That said, I think there has been support to try to figure out, hey, how do we look at this? How do we learn from others? And how do we integrate it either into the work that we're already doing, the priorities that we have, right? Or think about it a little differently. And I think, part of it is, working on it has been really trying to be a little more strategic about it and evolve it from where it's come before. So it's not just about water and using less of it and just replacing it. It's understanding, hey, where is the value of water throughout our whole value chain? Because it's not just our supply chain, right?
Right, right.
It's our communities in which we operate. And at the end of the day, we have all these owner operators in thousands of communities worldwide, that this is going to be a hyper local community issue.
Mhm.
And we need to figure out how to work with them so they can be a positive force in their communities around water too. So there is that supply chain element, no doubt about it. But we're also trying to figure out, hey, how does that also work within the restaurant footprint as well? And how do we help, those owner operators be a positive force in the communities for what they're doing? And I mean, I think we're also trying to look at it, I think most people think about it as a usage phase. We're trying to look at it from a water quality phase. We're looking at it from an infrastructure phase. We're looking at a food safety. There's so many elements to it that we're still figuring it out, but I feel pretty good about it in terms of the support we're getting.
For me, this is really a key part of, how you're thinking about it. You have a really wide lens in terms of what water means to you and your business model. And you talked about it earlier, that you're really a organization of small businesses. So how is water relevant to the person that owns one restaurant or, hundreds of restaurants? Well, that connectivity to the community and their customer base is really critical. And water, it goes back to, people can relate to water to varying degrees. So I love that touch point and connectivity. And, Tom and I try and bring that into the conversation. So it's not a geeky water conversation. It's, what does water mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, and it's okay. Not everyone the urgency issue, right, depending on the conversation, is going to depend on where you are somewhat geographically, right? And, it's okay. And I think that's one thing that we're also learning. We're such a big system in terms of the complexity, the supply chain, and so on and so forth. I think sometimes I have noticed in the field of sustainability, we want to change the world, right? We want to have that big impact, right? I think the cool part about water is it kind of brings us back to the roots of how do we change communities and build and multiply and go at it a little differently than just, I'm going to save the world or impact the world at a macro sense. The cool part about water is it brings you back to that community side, I think, which is something overall that I think needs to happen more, is kind of control your sphere of influence, right? Versus trying to just move everything all at once. But it's been, we have a great team that's working on it, and it's been a lot of fun for us. That's for sure.
Yeah. The blocking and tackling of the issue, as opposed to, let's start big and then go small. So.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting, Ian, to hear you mention the word community quite a lot in the last several minutes, and the narrative of seeing the restaurants as the kind of heart of the community. And I think back to my childhood and experiences in McDonald's, kind of with school parties or even meeting friends. It's a very social, obviously the last 18 months to one side where the landscape's changed. But I think there's something incredibly powerful on the water quality side of this discussion, and actually the role that McDonald's can play in the restaurant in terms of helping to educate and play a role in that discussion, which often doesn't get talked about, right?
Yeah, I think, and it's interesting. It's a really good point. And I think, I wish I could say it was intentional, and it's not. It's something I've been reflecting on since I've been doing this work. Is I've had a tendency to gravitate towards what I'll call accessible brands, right? So whether it was Ford Motor Company, whether it was Darden Restaurants and all the great brands that they have, or McDonald's, right? These are typically accessible brands, and I've always kind of tried to walk that line of, when you're an accessible brand to a wide grouping of people from so many different backgrounds, right? Do you want to educate? Do you want to raise awareness? I kind of think of it as, our role is kind of provide those aha moments. So not necessarily, tell them, the geeky stuff that we probably deal with every day, but provide them that aha moment that was like, oh, I didn't know that, right? So then they're doing the looking into, whatever it is. And I think, the great thing about McDonald's, to your point, Tom, is I think we have because we're an accessible brand, we can democratize a bit sustainability or awareness around these issues, right? I mean, people can come and enjoy sustainable coffee at McDonald's at a very affordable price. They don't have to spend a ton of money just to have access to that sustainable coffee. So that's the really cool part. And I think that's what we're trying to leverage is, hey, what are those things that we can do to reach people that may not think about it every day? And I think that's the other thing that's annoyed the heck out of me is people say either they care or they don't care. And it's not that they don't care. It's just they have a list of 10 other things that are priorities that aren't hitting them right now. So it's just more of how do you tap into that lower list, if you will, to kind of make them spend some time to look at it.
I tried to find the number of people that McDonald's serves on average every day. Just looking through stuff, and it's 69 million people. And I saw some figures lower and slightly higher, but something from
in that ballpark,
yeah, 69. And that's an incredibly powerful amount of people. And I don't want to quote lines from a Spider-Man film, with great power comes great responsibility. But just imagine
which Spider-Man movie? That's the key.
That's the first one, the Tobey Maguire ones, right?
I don't count that one.
No.
My daughter doesn't count that one.
Oh, really? You count the Andrew Garfield ones over? Let's not go down the Spider-Man rabbit hole.
Okay.
But what I'm trying to say, 69 million people every day, right? If you can give 10% of them an aha moment on sustainability and the impact that small things can make, just think about the power. We talk about, Will, I know we've had conversations about the ability to scale and have impact at scale. I mean, that is a truly monumental scale, right? 69 million people every day.
Yeah, those touch points.
All right.
And that's exactly it. I think it's more of, we've got great companies doing some incredibly leading edge work in sustainability. And, I applaud them, and I think they're doing a fantastic job. I probably wouldn't do that great there, right? Because I would be like, hey, what more would there be able to do? But, we need them. We need them to keep, pushing all of us along, right? And I think to your point on the responsibility piece, and that's how I've looked at it, I guess, or just learned to evolve. And maybe that's where I've just gravitated, is those brands that are a little more accessible, a little more affordable, have that reach, if you will. And then provide the aha moment and trust that, they'll do something with it. And it's not going to happen all the time, but I'd rather do that and kind of bring in all people and kind of expose it to them and let them try to figure it out for themselves.
Great. Ian, I'd like to spend a couple of minutes just talking about your view and I guess McDonald's view on innovation, whether it's internal or kind of external innovation in the sidecar approach. We've spoken with multinationals on their view to this, Will, with AB InBev and the 100 Plus Accelerator Program. We spoke with Procter & Gamble the last episode talking about the startup of the 50 Litre Home Coalition, which is a really interesting dynamic within Procter & Gamble. So you've just started a partnership with WaterStart that kind of ties into this in terms of the innovation side. So maybe you could kind of share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully McDonald's has a long history of innovation, but I think it's innovation around offerings, products. We've done some really innovative stuff too in other parts of sustainability throughout the supply chain and in our restaurants. And I think water's been one of those that frankly probably hasn't been a natural fit for innovation for McDonald's. I mean, if you look at our filtration processes and things like that inside the restaurants, they're top notch. I mean, that's incredible innovation, right? So from a water quality side, I think that's important. I think when we were looking at trying to figure out, hey, who do we partner with right now to learn from and try to support and kind of have unconventional partnerships, if you will. WaterStart made sense from that standpoint. One, they're doing some incredibly innovative stuff. I think it fits with how we're trying to look at this as a strategy versus just a stewardship approach, which I really liked. The other thing too is there's a lot of utilities, a lot of other members of WaterStart that are utilities. And that's, again, goes back to communities, right? How do we learn from them? How do we learn what are the issues that are pressing for them? So I think, selfishly, it was to help increase our learning on innovation, figure out where we can play a role in innovation, and then where's the best place for us to prioritize, whether it's restaurant innovation, whether it's supply chain innovation, maybe it's a certain commodity, maybe it's a certain region, because I think that's the cool part about water, right? Is it cuts across everything, no matter what the commodity, no matter if it's a restaurant, whatever it might be. Water, it cuts across so many different borders. So I think for us, that's why it made sense, and we're looking forward to working with them, learning from them, and hopefully scaling some solutions that would work in the communities which we operate.
So I applaud you for doing this because, as we've talked in the past, it puts you in that category of building on water stewardship and really thinking about water as a corporate strategy.
Yeah.
And, the companies that, I put in that strategy category in a maturity model are folks like AB InBev that have invested in identifying innovative solutions and accelerating them and scaling them. And what I also like about WaterStart is that they do have connections to utilities and commercial users, and that, in the world of water, that's not typically the group that hangs out with multinationals, so the ability to break down those silos and have one-on-one conversations about what are you seeing that's really interesting that might help me, and vice versa, is really powerful.
I think, and it's a good point, Will, and to also say, it's not saying it's a stewardship versus strategy thing for us.
Yeah.
A lot of it's learning, right? And I think we've talked about that. And I think, there are so many great things that have been done with the stewardship strategies. It's kind of taking those elements and then how do we enhance them? How do we, go after it that way? I think that's going to be key. I think, it's interesting, right? Because yes, McDonald's is a multinational, big brand, depending on the ranking, recognized brand in the world, right? The thing that we're finding, though, particularly in the US, is that it's hard to just try to do everything all at once at scale. And that was the other thing, that we have organizations of owner operators. And what we're finding is if we focus on smaller groupings, right, we can get better momentum and quicker momentum. And I think that was part of it too, was, hey, how can we, yes, they see us as a multinational, but when I came in and talked to a lot of the folks, please see us as a community-based organization as well, right? Because that's what our owner operators are. And quite frankly, they take a lot of pride in that, right? Whether it's their state, their county, their co-op, whatever it is, they take a lot of pride in that, as they should. So don't think of us as this big,
right,
thing. Part of it is, hey, how do we action some of this stuff at a quicker, smaller level, and then replicate as we move forward,
right?
Because I think that's what our history has been. A lot of the food innovation that we've had, whether it's Big Mac, Egg McMuffin, filet fish, didn't come from Chicago. That came from owner operators, and that came from the restaurants, and that was drawn up.
Interesting. Do you expect?
Got you speechless, Will. This is awesome.
I know. I think it's the first time, maybe ever.
Over 30 episodes, we have a record moment. Ladies and gentlemen, speechless.
I deserve a badge for that.
Okay, you're gonna get a vest and a waistcoat just to honor our cultural differences.
Put an old English D on it. That's all I care about. My Detroit roots.
Well, you got me thinking about your water strategy and leveraging the local, small businesses to think about water innovation that could then be scaled. So, and I know you're thinking about that, but again, that's a powerful aspect of your strategy going forward. It's tap into people that live and breathe this every day.
Yeah, no, it is. And I mean, I think, it's kind of too, like, just talking to people, trying to break down, I don't want to say stereotypes, or maybe it's preconceived notions, right? That water isn't an issue in Europe.
Right.
I know we've had the recent floodings and things like that, but even before that, talking to some of my, our folks in Eastern Europe, right? Water's a big issue for some of our customers in some markets, not all, but some,
Right.
which blew me away. Like, I was like, why, it's gloomy, it's rainy, it's whatever, right? But it is a big issue, right? It is a big issue in terms of how people are trying to adjust to and adapt to a climate that's changing, in terms of how they're producing food, or how they're running restaurants, or how they're trying to just make their communities better, right? And more sustainable.
I think it's the what I find really interesting, particularly with that WaterStart partnership, is the ability to connect people that might not have been connected beforehand. Whether it's the owners, operators of a single restaurant or a franchise, or even entrepreneurs who may have a solution to a problem they don't know that even exists, right? Or even the water utilities as well, that sometimes might not necessarily get a seat at the table within those particular talks. I think that's really interesting. But Ian, I'd like to perhaps finish with something that me and Will are looking to do on this episode and others, is really we bring on people with a bias for action. We believe that's kind of what we've done over the last 3 seasons, and we'd like to revisit with you in kind of 90 days to kind of really show how you have had a bias for action. So it'd be great to kind of find out what you're planning to do within the next 3 months, particularly on the water agenda, and then maybe we can come back and just hear from you on how that's gone.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it right now is we're in this kind of socialization phase as we've evolved it. I mean, I would love the pandemic kind of slowed things down all the way around, right? But I think we're getting some good support around it. And I think, if I had to say, and I think, yes, being part of WaterStart is one element of it. I think what I'm hopeful, and we have incredible leadership support for this, is how do we go after this? Yes, as an important thing for McDonald's, but more importantly, how do we do these unconventional partnerships? Because I believe those are what are going to be the most important in the future. How do we create more of those unconventional partnerships? So reaching outside our industry, right? Maybe it's with competitors. I do believe water is going to be a pretty competitive issue. Yeah. I don't subscribe to this has to be a singular McDonald's gets credit for X, Y, and Z. This has to be, how do we partner with others? How do we figure out those partnerships? So, maybe we'll have a better idea of how we're going to pursue those, right? Because we've done some unconventional partnerships in the past. And I think they've served us well. And I think there are things that we can learn from them and others can learn from us, right? But, to me, it's such a critical issue that to try to pursue it from a singular credit and just get a story out there or what have you, that's not why we're in this. We're in this because we're in communities. We want to stay part of communities. We want to make communities better. And frankly, water is a critical part of our system. And I think others will see it that way too. And if we can partner with it and scale it quicker, game on, right?
Right.
We're ready to go.
Imagine how powerful that would be in the world of water, right, Will? We've talked about the scale of McDonald's, but even as a kind of bringing in competition in terms of the fast food companies teaming up, uniting around water. I mean, imagine the increased scale around that. It'd be incredible.
Yeah, and no one's done that, Ian. So no one's looked at your sector as a way to for example, increase education awareness about water, just at a very basic level. It's like, this is why water is important.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it will be done in 90 days, but maybe different. But no, what I'm saying is, you bring up a really good point. Well, I think in that, do different industries have different roles, right? You know what
Yes.
I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah, well, no, so yes, I do. And that fits absolutely into the strategy discussion, which is, look, I think there's an a focus, an obsession about water footprint. And what we really need to be thinking about is, what does McDonald's really do well? And what is their power to have a positive impact in solving water? Well, it's the 69 million people per day. Those touch points are unique to you as a company and as a sector. So, quite candidly, I could care less how many gallons of water you use. What I care more about is the 69 million touch points and what that can do to solve wicked water problems. So,
and I would just say too that the measurement's incredibly important to make sure you have credibility, right? But to just focus on measurement for measurement's sake takes away from time from driving impact. And I think that's the whole struggle that the whole industry is facing, right? I mean, we're all trying to be very credible and moving forward, but does measurement start to take away or pull away from the ability to put resources towards impact? And I think that's what we're going to have to balance.
Exactly.
Great stuff. Well, on that note, Ian, we are just over the 30-minute magic mark. I love the phrase unconventional partnerships. I think that's brilliant. So certainly something we'll hopefully see more of. And like you say, there's 90 days, but hopefully we can reach back to you and see kind of at least some more of those conversations. So I want to thank you for your time, for sharing your story and your journey, and continued with the great work you're doing. And Will, final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I was almost speechless again, twice in one conversation.
Wow.
I really love how you talked about an accessible brand. I mean, if we're really going to have a positive impact in the world, then being accessible is really critical, as opposed to some, untouchable elitist brand. It's like, you're connected to humanity. That's powerful. So
I appreciate it. I mean, I think it's a unique opportunity, and like I said, we're looking forward to it. And this water stuff, I think, is, I talked to y'all before, working with students and seeing their interest level, right? I will tell them 9 times out of 10, it's great to focus on sustainability, but start looking at things like water and soil health and these things. And it's going to be really, really important stuff, really important work. If I could go back and do it again, that's what I would be doing.
Not too late, Ian.
I know.
First things first, let's 90 days unconventional partnerships.
That's great.
We're going to send you the best in the post, as well as the loop of saying from Will that you're very open. We'll make sure that's certainly our bias fraction and our what we've promised.
Good with that.
So.
And as long as you send the loop of me being speechless with my mouth open, I think we've got it covered.
Well, I'll remove all my Detroit posters back here, right, and put that frame back here of Will saying how great I am.
Sounds great, Ian. Thanks so much. Always a joy.
Thanks,
Ian,
guys.
appreciate your time.
Really appreciate it. A lot of fun.